Hello everyone, welcome back to Blurred Box. I'm Chloe.
I'm Haven.
I'm Pooja.
And I'm Sophie.
And this is our podcast where we bring you guys interesting discussions every week that typically surround world events, human rights, and our lives as students in Stanford University's online high school. Today we're joined here by Aino Alkio. She's actually an alumni of our school. She graduated of class of 2019. She was the student body vice president and also a tennis player. And she's actually joining us all the way from Finland.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Hi.
I know it's been a long time since you've been in high school, I'm guessing, right? How's things since graduating, or what are you currently up to right now?
Yeah, so I graduated last summer or spring, and I've been taking a gap year, so I haven't been studying much, but I've just been focusing on tennis and just training a lot and playing some tournaments, until the corona kind of stopped all of that. But yeah, I was supposed to just play a lot of tournaments and kind of focus on tennis this year, and then I'm going to college next fall. But yeah, this year has just been kind of like relaxing a little bit from doing the combination of tennis at OHS, which was kind of difficult. So I've really enjoyed having a little bit like more time to just focus on tennis and put all of my effort in that.
Yeah, very nice. Where are you planning to go for college?
I'm going to Northwestern.
Oh,
congratulations.
Really nice.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know
Yeah,
a lot of my friends right now are considering taking a gap year before heading out to college or deferring for a year because of the whole COVID-19 situation. What made you decide that you wanted to take a year in between?
I just knew that I kind of needed a little bit of time to breathe and have just know I don't know. I enjoyed having time to think about what I would want to major in and kind of have that extra year of finding what I want to do later on, and also just have that time to really focus on tennis. And I felt like it was really hard to be able to do my like best and perform at the highest level while I was doing OHS. So when I got the kind of chance to be able to focus on tennis, I really wanted to try to do that.
Would you recommend it to the students who are considering it now, do you think? Without knowing, their like personal situation and everything.
Like taking it because of the coronavirus, or?
Yeah, like, do you think that it's been like beneficial for you to be able to like take that breath and focus on, for you, like tennis is a passion of yours? Do you think that that's like something that we should encourage people to keep considering?
Definitely. I think it's super useful. I think even just having a year of kind of personal growth and maturity will help you take the most out of college, I think. Of course, it depends on like your personal situation and if you can take a gap year, or if you, I don't know. I mean, at the same time, I think for those considering it now, maybe if you're just going to you can't really do much and you'll still be stuck at home in isolation, and maybe then that's not going to be as beneficial as doing maybe online classes or taking advantage of being able to study. But I guess it does depend on like your own situation, but I really felt that it was beneficial for me.
Right. Glad to hear that.
I'm just curious, but why did you join OHS? Like, was it because of your tennis, so you had more time to pursue that?
Yeah, so I've actually been living in Spain for the past 7-ish years now. So I moved there to train in an academy, and so I've been training like the days mostly. So we'll start at like 8 or 9 and then finish at like 5 most days, 5 or 5:30. So then I couldn't really do a normal school. And I really wanted to still kind of focus on studying and not just do like a like a distance school, because they're often like here are the books and then you have the exams. But I really wanted to have a little bit more structure and be able to still have a relatively normal school experience. So that was kind of why. But then I really also enjoyed OHS, so that's why I stayed there.
Sure. What's your schedule actually like now when you have this gap year and all this time? Well, you're obviously competing and traveling. What's your schedule like on a day-to-day basis during this gap year?
Yeah. So now I'm doing mostly the same schedule in terms of tennis. So when I have training weeks, we train Monday to Friday, like mornings from 8 or 9 to like 1:30. Then I'll have lunch, and then we have afternoon practice from 3 to maybe 5:30. And then I think the main thing that now I have more time is like to do recovery after that, to go to the physio, to like really just do the things that maybe got neglected before. And then I feel like I've just taken more time to like cook and do like, I don't know.
That's
like,
so healthy for yourself.
Yeah.
And also just living alone now or with a roommate, there's a lot of like cleaning and things like that you need to take care of. So I definitely didn't appreciate enough living at home last year.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to transition from being a student to being an adult, you know.
Oh yeah, I definitely need that breath of fresh air, right? Like even now with the COVID-19, it's a good thing. Like the whole world has kind of like slowed down, in my opinion. Like everything has been moving so fast for the longest time, right? Not just for students, but for like business people. And the fact that everyone has been able to like come to a stop, I think is a really good thing. So probably the gap year, even without the coronavirus or with it now, it's probably an even better option, I think.
Yeah, because we always tend to like overwork ourselves in high school. We try to do everything, even though we're just kids. But I think it's really nice that you took a gap year and you found time to do something that you truly loved and you found time to better yourself. So,
do you plan to pursue it in college when you go to Northwestern?
Tennis?
Yeah, I'm on the tennis team there. So that's also a big reason of why I chose Northwestern.
Okay.
Chloe, you do tennis really competitively too, right? You guys ever have any overlap?
Oh yeah, I definitely understand. I've talked with Aino like just throughout the year as well. I've kind of like gone to her for her experience and expertise into how balance the academics and tennis, because just competitively traveling all the time, takes a toll on you, on your mental and whatnot and physical. You know, being cramped in a plane, that's not fun, even without playing sport. And then just balancing all the academics very rigorously, especially with our school, as you guys know. So just I've been going to her for advice throughout the year on how to do that and how like she managed to survive and stay alive through all that. She's been really, really helpful, and I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to be able to reach out to her for those things. I think the main thing, I remember in Spain when I was there. Are you in the Academy of Sanchez Casal, or where is it?
No, I was in Bruguera when I first got to Spain, and then after 2 years, I was first with a coach alone, and then now I'm in a team with 2 other girls at a club. So I've been kind of switching around, but in Barcelona all the time. But I definitely know Sanchez Casal. They have a lot of tournaments.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember being in like the physio a lot when I was training in Spain. Like the training in Spain is very different from where I was in France. They just like continuously work you. At least that's what I remember.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of like repetitions.
Yeah, they make you play, like they have a very different training style, I remember, from France. And there's like a lot more heavy spin. Yeah, let's not go into like the tennis part because I think we're going to get carried away with that.
My eyes are becoming glazed over. So.
I know. That's probably a different discussion. We can bring you on for another episode. Just you and me, I know. We can talk about that.
For like sports commentators.
Yes.
Yeah. What we're actually here for, to talk about with Aino today, is that she's from Finland, right? The interesting thing about Finland, and in relation to topics that we've been talking about in the past, so if you've been listening to our past episodes, we've covered topics like affirmative action in our previous episodes, and also on human rights in other aspects like women's rights. Obviously, we're a group of girls, and that's a really interesting and appealing topic to us. And so Finland has an interesting aspect in the fact of its gender parity landscape. I think Aino can probably expand a bit more on that, being from there, and also, you know, just seeing how that unfolds in real life, if that reflects at all from, you know, facts that we've gathered online and what we can gather from, I guess, evidence and things like that. I know, what is that like, or at least how would you be able to expand on gender parity landscape in Finland?
Yeah, I think, well, generally, of course, it's seen as a pioneer, I think, in gender equality. But I would say it's something that growing up, I didn't really think about much. Like for most of my childhood, we've had a women president. It was nothing that was really different or new or exceptional. Of course, like now it's a lot in the headlines, the new woman prime minister, and there's a lot of talk about her being like younger and leading a government that's I think it's like 60-something% female. So there's a lot of like generally just talk about how that has shifted, but I think that it comes from kind of having a history of really early on giving full political rights to women and being really like having had that long-term kind of foundation of gender equality. So I think that it's nothing that is really new from these past few years, but rather from the, if not the last century, the last decades.
I have a question. So really just seeing how it's like Finland has reached a point where I would consider, there is equality there. Do you still think there is some like old forms of sexism or oppression still embedded in its roots? And have you felt that?
I think that it's definitely not a problem that has been fully solved. Like you can say that based on the numbers, it might be, leading or being among the countries that have at least improved in terms of gender equality. But, there are still, if you look at the top companies here, there's still below 10% of the leaders are women, or of entrepreneurs, 30% or something are women. Or you look at the engineering schools and below 20% are women. So there's definitely not, I wouldn't go to say that there's, and of course, like, women tend to choose industries that maybe male though, and I'm not saying we have to achieve 50-50 in everything, but you look at especially businesses and kind of the opportunities that are maybe given to women, and you can still see a lot of differerences.
I was just going to say that since we were talking earlier about you traveling so frequently, for competitive tennis, if you felt any difference in, different parts of the world where you've traveled to, different European countries, if that's been, like places with less gender parity, if you felt like that around you, or if it's been harder for you to detect, because I assume you're not, as involved in those places.
There's definitely a difference. Like I've been to tournaments where if you are going from, the tournament side to the hotel, I knew that I had to put long sleeves on and you can't just go in whatever, or you are paying the taxi driver and they won't take the money unless it's from your coach who's a male, or, there are situations like that.
Where were these?
This was, I think both of these, one was in Qatar and then in Kuwait.
Gotcha.
So it's definitely a different feeling, and I think that coming from having spent a lot of time in Finland and in Spain, where these are not really situations that have happened, it really also kind of in the other way, it makes you appreciate the progress. Like obviously there's still a lot to do, but it also, I think, is good to sometimes appreciate or like acknowledge that the things that we're doing to improve gender equality are still working, and there's a lot of progress that has been made in a lot of countries.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think it's really great that there's so much gender equality in Finland and that females are really empowered there, because we don't really have that yet in the US, or we haven't reached that same point in the US. But I was also wondering what the men in Finland have to say about the gender revolution, and like whether they have a different perspective on women being empowered and women holding so many roles in politics, or roles that maybe in the US men usually hold.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good response to that. I have, spent the last years in Spain, haven't like super closely followed the Finnish politics, but I think just from like personal perspective or like a personal experience, I haven't really noticed much of like a pushback. Of course, there's, for example, now I said that the government is like more than 60% female. Now there's like has been some talk about whether, because there's a kind of like an unofficial quota of 40% of either female or male that you need to meet, but it's not like you can't from the government because it's not in the like founding laws. But I think there are always people who are gonna feel maybe threatened with the progress in gender equality, and I think it's just going to be important to kind of emphasize that feminism doesn't mean women over male, it means
Right.
having the same rights.
Yeah.
Especially
exactly.
young boys.
Finland has probably also been able to kind of hold on to that too and not have as much backlash because Finland is a very otherwise, in many places successful country. I think that there's been some pushback, mostly I think because people are bored in quarantine, but on Twitter there's been a repeal the 19th hashtag that's been trending in the US because our 19th Amendment is giving the women the right to vote. And it's not like going to be seriously politically considered. I have confidence to say, but it is reflective, I think, of a lot of people who are using this hashtag are saying like women were given the right to vote 100 years ago and they've messed our country up and therefore we should take it away, and it's horrible, like reading that. I'll see if I can find some of those tweets to read, but it's difficult because America has obviously had, we have our ups, we have our lows, and as any country does, as Finland has definitely also had. But I think you guys have a higher standard of living generally in your country too. So I think that might be, even if it's not reflective of women in office, I think it's nice that people don't necessarily have things that they can point at and blame it on their gender. So
yeah, but I do actually think it's probably reflective to having a more equal gender, it's like females have more opportunities than compared to other countries. You're giving equal opportunity to everyone so they can choose what they want to do. So I think that does really reflect on how successful Finland is. And
part of it is like just, the success comes from, I think something I read was like from the World Economic Forum or something like that. They said like in Finland, right, it's the most effective country at utilizing human talent solely because they support the women in that sense of being able to have like 50% and 50% equally, well, relatively. It might not be precise in the numbers, but it's close enough compared to like US, for example. So, in what we've been talking about with like Finland, they have had women occupy all of the highest political positions before. So like whether it's prime minister, minister of foreign affairs, minister of defense, etc., president of republic, like US is nowhere close to that. So, it's amazing to see how, one country is able to do that. But, in the US, it's like, how is that something that, we should be trying to follow? Obviously, I think it's, for most people, you'd think, yeah, that's the role model. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. It's like, is that probably a model that we should try and follow in Finland? Or, there are problems in itself of following that in the US solely because of different cultural differences or whatnot?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's kind of that, I think we need to still be able to look at for example, in the US, why are we not getting a woman to be the president? Or why are you like kind of really trying to look at the deeper causes? Because, you can, even if you did elect a woman president and after those 4 or 8 years, you're still going to be stuck with a lot of problems in terms of gender equality. It's not going to, because you elect one woman to that role, of course it's going to inspire a lot of girls, and it would be amazing, I think, for all of us to see that happen. But I think even if that happens, we can't really forget that there are still deeper, maybe systematic problems that are kind of why then that's kind of, or that's where they show, right? Like that's the outcome of having some of those issues and then looking at what those are. So yeah, sorry, that was maybe confusing, but.
No, well, the fact that we still talk about, that we're even having this discussion, is something remarkable, I think goes to show that it isn't the norm necessarily, or that it is remarkable for Finland to have reached this point, meaning that they've had to overcome a lot of those systematic barriers. I think a lot of that, we've talked about this in previous episodes too. I've experienced this in like teaching young girls too, and in our education system. Girls are very quickly herded away from STEM-oriented subjects, socially conditioned, to see what paths are available to them in the future. So I'd be curious to look more into how Finland's educational system might differ from ours over here, and how they might, teach that differently, or otherwise, encourage young girls to move into different careers. Like you mentioned, though, I think you mentioned that like women's enrollment at like engineering colleges was low and stuff like that. So that might be one of the barriers that is still similar.
Yeah, but I also think it's quite remarkable that Finland has so many women in political positions, because over here, I think while women don't tend to go to STEM, it's even less likely to go into a field of law or philosophy over here. So it's really remarkable that Finland has reached that point where it has a majority female dominated political power. So it's impressive.
I do think that part of it also just comes down to the mindset and the fact that I think young girls in Finland might have, role models to look up to, because there have been so many Finnish female leaders in their country.
True, yeah.
Whereas in like the US, in our education system, young kids don't have anyone to look up to or anyone to read in their history books who are female presidents or who have even really been like huge female powers. And so I think that's kind of a turn off for some girls trying to enter politics, or they just like don't even think that they should enter politics, or if it's even worth entering it if they might not be able to achieve their dream of, say, becoming a female president.
Right.
No, exactly.
That's where the term breaking the glass ceiling comes from, right? It's not like, ooh, one of the women made it past the glass ceiling. It's more like she broke it so that other women are able now to continue moving up too.
And this goes to show, especially in our previous discussion with Marie, about how important representation is for young children, no matter
Absolutely.
the gender. Because it's almost basically defining on what they're going to pursue, because a lot of times they feel motivated or pressured one way or other depending on the representation that's available. So yeah,
and it's not just, I think, seeing someone do a job or do something that you'd want to do. It's also having or entering into a job that has people around you that are your friends and that you can relate to. Like, I think that it's normal to be hesitant to want to go to an engineering school where 15% are female only, because that's, in a classroom of 15 or 20 people, you might be one of the only women there. So there's definitely also that question of like the usefulness of having at least for some time some quotas, or finding kind of a way to like break that loop where you're not getting more females because it's so male dominated, and kind of even if you don't want to, or you don't think that it's going to be useful later on to have like that 40 or something percent minimum every year or for all jobs or fields, but kind of finding a way of breaking that loop and letting making it more attractive for women to enter jobs. And it's also true for some jobs for males, like nursing or more health or care oriented jobs, that it's really hard for men to think, okay, it's like 90-something% females. I would love to be a nurse, but it's, it's of course something that affects if your environment is not, gender balanced. So I think it's an interesting question to think about, because obviously it's, we might be either naturally kind of prone to go to certain sectors, or it might be also kind of driving that, the fact that it is already so gender imbalanced.
Mm-hmm. I just really wanted to quickly mention intersectionality in feminism in Finland too, because I think it's interesting that Finland is a relatively, ethnically homogenous country. So when we're talking about representation, I do think it's a great thing that there's so many women represented, especially in like the political sphere. But I wonder how many women of color are represented there too, or if that is, a goal of intersectional feminism that Finland still has yet to reach too. For, every young girl to have a role model this same way that, the young men might. So I just want to point that out. That might be something to work towards.
Yeah, I think that's, generally always the goal of having as diverse kind of role models as you can. But of course, Finland generally is not as ethnically diverse, as you said, as the US is. So I think it's not as realistic for us to have the same percentages as in the US of having different ethnicities represented, but definitely making sure that there's no barrier for any ethnicity or for people coming from any backgrounds to enter, a job or a political office or anything like that. So yeah, I think that's definitely very important.
Right. And so is there anything else actually that we should know or learn about from Finland's system that we aren't aware of? I guess like one of the things that Haven brought up earlier, right, was like the education system and how that differs from America, for example. That's for one.
Yeah, I think, well, in Finland, it's very different from the US education system. So almost everyone goes to public school, or if you go to private school, they're not allowed to charge any tuition. So you might, you don't even really know which are private or public. There's not really a difference in that sense. So that really allows for everyone to get a really equal education. So then kind of you have that equal starting off point. And university is also free, so it's not, I think that's a really important basis for having those equal opportunities, that no one's doing some expensive prep programs or additional courses, because it's everyone has the same books and everyone has the same problem sets, and you're all doing the same, kind of having those same or equal resources. So that's definitely a very important and appreciated point in Finland. And of course also generally in Finland, the teachers are I would say more appreciated than in the US. So they're it's very hard to get into the school for studying to be a teacher, and it's almost like people usually compare it to the doctor or lawyer. So it's
that's really important, I think, because that also incentivizes people to care about going into that field, since our teachers are so underpaid and don't have the resources a lot of the time to teach their students. That's interesting.
But I like how Finland is making education easily accessible to everyone. I think the reason why we have such big divides here in the US is because of education, and getting good education or getting good test scores often correlates to spending more money for better schools or just better tutoring or whatever it may be. So it's really nice that Finland is making education easily accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and I think a small part of it is also just having a really equal kind of starting point for getting into university. So we only have the end of the high school exams are kind of the only tests that you'll take, nationwide tests that you'll take during your schooling until high school. So you take those in your last year, and then you apply to universities either with that or then with entrance exams. So you don't even need to use those end of high school exam scores. If you did poorly, you can, for most studies, use their kind of field specific entrance exams. So then, they're public information, and you can see everyone's score and who enters. So it's very different compared to the US.
Oh my God. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does Finland assign homework? And I think I've heard that you don't do that there.
No, that's a myth.
Okay. I was like, no homework. Wow.
I'm moving.
I've seen some YouTube videos. I remember in Norwegian's Spanish class, I think, we watched a YouTube video about the Finnish education system. It was dessert every day, no homework, we sit on bouncy balls. And
oh my God.
I saw something
that sounds how
you
people
guys
describe
have
online school.
Oh yeah. I saw something you guys have free school lunch. Is that another myth?
That's true. No, that's true.
I'm moving there. Come on, you have to pay so much for school lunch for, yeah.
Okay, but stemming from my previous point that the reason why I think America has divides is because of education. Do you see any divides socioeconomically or gender or any other reason? Do you see these divides in Finland in any other way or case?
In education, I think it's very equal, because it's, you are really applying, or you really have that kind of same base. And then when it comes to entering university, you're all doing the same exams. And that kind of, if you do your, that you have a way of kind of affecting the outcome, where I feel in the US, students are often stressing for many years whether they're going to enter university or not. They might in their first year of high school be thinking about college, or probably are. Where in Finland, I feel like it's not as much, like people are taking more gap years and kind of, I don't know, I feel like high school is just less stressful of a time here than in the US, because you're always stressing about college and whether you're going to be able to enter, because you don't know if, even if you get all perfect test scores in the US, that doesn't mean that you get into school or where you're going to go. So
right. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Finland has like pretty low crime rates, especially compared to the US. And maybe that might also be a part of the fact that people are given equal opportunity. So I think a lot of times the divide between people can also come from people thinking that others might have more opportunity than someone else. And because of that, people retaliate, or they get angry or frustrated because they think that they're constantly below other people. Whereas I feel like in Finland, what's great about it is that everybody has the equal opportunity to become successful. And it's just a matter of like how they choose to take that opportunity or what they choose to do with that opportunity. So I think that's a really cool thing about Finland.
Yeah, definitely. But as to like the crime rate, I also want to point out like one thing that is definitely a big problem here in terms of gender equality is like sexual harassment and domestic violence. So I think it's like almost, what is it, like 40-something% that report having been physically or sexually like abused, or having had experience with physical or sexual violence after turning 15 or something like that. So it's, you know, almost half of all women. I think it's almost double the average rate in Europe. So it's definitely
so professional representation doesn't equate to.
Do you think that there's like a higher percentage of these harassment cases because women feel more able to speak out due to having a lot of women in power? Because I feel like I've heard a lot of stories that a lot of people also in different other countries also experience the same, but they don't tend to speak out, so they don't get counted in those percentages. So maybe there's a correlation there.
Yeah, I don't know how the study was done, so it could definitely affect that depending on how they, but I think it was pretty anonymous, so I think it was probably fairly representative if it was like an anonymous survey, but there's definitely a problem with having pretty poor resources for victims, like not enough shelters, and also just, I think, a general culture of people not wanting to have a part in other people's business. So if you hear something from the neighbors, you're supposed to, or not supposed to, but like people are very hesitant to kind of put their nose into things that don't belong to them. So I think it also can come from like a general culture of not you know, asking like, sorry, what's happening, or things.
There's
like
also, I think often like an unintended consequence of having, you know, a lot of women in power or having the majority is that often those claims of like sexual harassment or assault are somewhat invalidated. So if you were to say like, I'm experiencing this at my work, and they say, okay, but you work with 10 women and 2 men, you know, how is that possible? You know, I think that that's existed at workplaces in the US where women have, you know, a majority of holdings there. And you would think, you know, like Sophie mentioned, that having more women in power might make you feel more comfortable talking about it or seeking justice. But a lot of the time, it's actually more difficult because men still have some intrinsic power in their ability to, you know, assault women. You know, so that's something that you can't really take away no matter how many women you fill in a room. So that's still kind of a power dynamic that exists and it's hard to overcome, definitely even in countries like Finland, where on the outside it seems like there's more equality. I think there's definitely still those personal power dynamics to have to struggle against.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are a lot of just unconscious biases or things that affect women that we might not notice in numbers. So, you know, all of us are probably, like, if we're walking on the street and it's dark, we're all going to be relatively more scared than a male would be, you know, I think.
Right.
It just
You're still women.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still, even if you achieve, you know, half of the CEOs being women, it doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot of kind of problems on the other side of achieving gender equality, and kind of that general just respect and how do you say, like, perspective on the two genders. So
yeah, I think I want to say one thing where all of the very good benefits that we've all been discussing, kind of in awe of, just because of that huge stark contrast between what we're used to seeing in the US, which is where most of us are kind of based, well, 3 of you, and between Finland. Gender equality is not the like only fix, I guess, is one thing to take away, right? What we've been talking about, it's one of the things that have a lot of good, but also just in our really messed up society and world that we live in, it's not the only fix, is probably one thing to preface to, I guess, the general discussion of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, Haven, if you wanted to add on to that.
No, I agree. I think that seeing Finland having made such great strides in gender parity is great. I think that I know you've pointed out that that doesn't solve everything for women. I've tried explaining to my male friends several times when they ask why, you know, I'm careful around men, even that I trust. It's because you'll never really experience, you know, stepping into a room and feeling physically, you know, vulnerable.
Right.
A lot of the time, inherently. So I think that's something that still exists. And the discussion about education, I think that's something that Finland has definitely taken a lead on too. I think healthcare is also important. I think that's also granted women a lot more autonomy too. So I think that also links back. So I think we've seen that there are a lot of different threads that need to come together to kind of weave like a complete picture of what gender equality might look like. And that's healthcare and education and, you know, overcoming personal biases. And I think we just have to keep working towards that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're all kind of support each other. So if you have, you know, women getting the manager positions or everything else, it's also going to reflect back to maybe more equal, you know, work in the home. Like you're going to be, I think at least in Finland, women still do like 1.5 times the amount of housework that males do. And the general, I don't know how your experiences have been, but I think that there's still a very strong kind of unconscious expectation that women are going to be maybe taking care of the children or picking them up from school or maybe doing more of that work. So I think they're all going to kind of support each other, and as we improve each one hopefully as quickly as possible, they can also kind of drive all of the kind of different aspects forward together.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
there are definitely a lot of hidden bias or like little things that kind of herd women in a certain direction. One of the things that I have an ear for is when people talk about dads like babysitting their kids as opposed to moms just doing their job and watching the children. You know, I think that's one of the kind of hidden biases that we see a lot.
Yeah, and that links to the role of women, actually. That is something that we'll talk a bit more on, and we have in our next episode next week, where we'll actually bring that into context with law. And one of the instructors in our school who will be coming on to kind of discuss this with us, having her background in law, even despite being the head of our English division. So that's something to watch out for. Yeah. So what's something that we do with all of our guests that we bring on for this podcast is we have something called our box segment, hence the blurred box. Basically, think about this box, and inside this box, kind of describe words that you would use to describe, or in general, words to describe Finland and its people, and then outside of the box, words probably that you wouldn't use.
Okay, so first, I guess, inside the box, I would say
I can put it out there. You don't have to use just single words because we often have trouble with that. You can use phrases or sentences too.
Okay. I guess just generally ask people maybe we're like introverted in the general. Like, of course, there are exceptions, but I would say that's definitely one characteristic.
By introverted, I'm actually curious, do you mean by like, because I lived in France for quite a long time, and having been in Europe, I can't subject it to just Finland, but I have been there for like tournament and such. But growing up in Europe and having that culture, it's kind of like when I went to America, it's a very different thing where just, I wouldn't say it's introverted, but it seems that way just because you usually just keep to yourself. It's not that you're and you don't want to talk to other people, but it's just kind of like we mind our own business and we don't really feel the need to make superficial but not like it's not superficial conversation, but like you move over to the US and like this grocery guy started talking
small talk.
Yeah, exactly. He'd be like, how are you doing? Do you need anything else?
Especially
like,
in the South.
Hi.
If you go to the South, for sure, you can't get in the elevator without, oh, how you doing?
Yeah,
weather
exactly.
today, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of
is,
those things that I think might be one of the what you might call like introverted. I'm not sure whether that's like anything related to what you were thinking, but that's kind of just from my perspective of growing up there.
No, definitely. And I think it's that sense of like, oh no, strangers walking by me. What am I going to do? I'm going to look away quickly. Like it's very different than in the US, I feel like. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I definitely get that. And also just comparing like Finland and Spain, I think first going to Spain and, you know, everyone's giving 2 kisses and I'm like, wait, oh my God, what's happening? Like,
yeah, that's something you do in France too. You do it on both cheeks. That's a really huge cultural shock too.
Americans, we're not fans of that.
Like 6 feet apart now with coronavirus.
Yeah, there's a joke about like Finnish people in the elevator, like if they're looking at your shoes, then they like you or like are willing to talk to you. Normally
I've heard that
their own shoes.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like no eye contact, but if we look at your shoes, then
I guess one other thing that maybe to help you out in thinking of that, I want to say, like that's probably related to like introverted, but like cold might be one of those like words that are on the line there, because like have you heard that you guys when and this is globally, right? The colder the country is, the colder the people, and the hotter the country or like closer to the equator. Have you not heard of that?
That makes sense.
No, I haven't.
No, I mean, it checks out just thinking about it.
Yeah, I've heard it. Weather defines people. I heard it.
Right? So when you like maybe think of Iceland, well, okay, Iceland is just deceiving in itself because Iceland wasn't named after Iceland like for that reason. You can like check that story on Iceland, Greenland. Yeah,
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's
so fun.
I've always thought of that.
Exactly, but like those countries that are closer to north, usually you think like they're colder countries, colder climate, they're colder people. Does that relate in any way? I know.
Yeah, and I think there's just generally more of a culture of, you know, staying inside, staying within maybe your family, whereas I think compared to Spain, you know, you're spending even on weeknights most of the time outside, maybe in like the plazas or in a like a restaurant, just you know, spending kind of more time in the community, I think, or having, so like I feel like in Finland it's like, okay, you want to meet with a friend and you're going to have like a meeting for like next Thursday at some time. But whereas in Spain, it's like you're kind of going out every night, even with if it's just like with your family and going to, I don't know, have a coffee in the like nearby cafe. But there's just more of a culture of being outside, obviously, due to the weather as well, than maybe there is here.
In the US, it's like that on the East Coast versus West Coast.
That's true, actually. Like,
actually, I had the opportunity to compete in Finland in 2019. And it was kind of rainy and cold when I went, but I still loved the country because I was in Espoo, which is right outside of the capital. So it was really nice, but I do see kind of what Chloe was saying and what you say about in Finland, they are naturally a little bit more introverted, and not that I got like a feeling of hostility or like people not being friendly. It was just that they were kind of, it was busy, the streets were busy, but like you weren't really interacting amongst each other. You were kind of just like to yourself.
Minding our own business. Kind of thing.
Yeah, minding your own business, yeah.
Right, yeah. I remember going there as well. I went to Helsinki and, you know, funny enough, it was raining and cold as well when I went there. Coincidence.
It's always raining and cold, guys.
This question will be good for you. Chicago is very similar.
Yeah, so that was my experience at least there. But like Pooja said, it's not the thing to probably take away is like, you know, it's not that people are hostile. Like you said, it's just a different culture of how people grow up and how they work. I guess, you know, you see that everywhere, all over the world. But yeah, was there anything else that you might want to add to that segment? I know.
No, I think we've kind of covered everything. Unless you have any other question or something. I'm sorry if this wasn't super informative, but
Are you
no,
finished?
It was amazing.
Thanks. I think we should end on that.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
definitely. And it's strong.
Exactly.
yeah, I'm finished.
Like, I'm done. I'm gonna shut up now. Yeah. Anything from you guys?
No, this was really helpful. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
I liked the discussion.
Oh no, yeah. I think we have to do more of the. I think the other one that we did on this on something similar to this episode, we talked to Tomas, another student in our school who's in Portugal, and he gave us some like insight into those intercultural differences as well. But yeah, this was super informative. I think a lot of us can take away a lot from this, and just it's very important to see those differences in culture and such. But anyway, so that's pretty much all we had for you guys today. Thank you so much, Aino, for coming on today and giving us the time of your day to talk with us about all this. And thank you guys.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you guys for listening to Blurred Box with Chloe, Haven, Pooja, and Sophie. If you like our show and want to know more, check us out on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of Blurred Box because we release episodes every Saturday.
We would love to hear your feedback, suggestions, and questions, which you can email to blurredbox88@gmail.com. And if you want to stay up to date, you can follow us on Instagram or Twitter at blurredbox for the latest updates.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.